take a look at how the European and local markets are trading. Well, a quick look, however, at the Bitcoin standings as well, $6,766. That's for one Bitcoin, while in South African rands, it'll set you back 92,811. It's pretty much flat for now, but that is quite an interesting figure considering where it stood in the past. But let's take a look at how the markets, and let's get into the real meat of the markets themselves as well. Gary Boyson's portfolio manager at Rand Swiss joining me today. Thank you so much for the time, Gary. Quite an interesting one. Markets themselves today on the local front, a little bit flat, but of course the big talking point overall will be Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump's meeting. Less than 24 hours to go. How will that fare with regards to the markets? What do you think they will set for themselves as a criteria to trade?
Yeah, you see, it's very difficult for markets to price this kind of meeting in. And you see it whenever you get markets trying to trade on political news, because what kind of risk premium do you put on a potential breakdown of the talks? These are kind of unprecedented talks as well. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see how they develop, but very difficult to price them. And that's why you're seeing an increase in volatility ahead of the announcement, seeing it in currency markets, seeing it in stocks and equity and bond markets as well. But as you said, a lot of news this week. And we're sort of coming out of a weekend where we, had Donald Trump again, making all sorts of noises at the G7. Yeah. Although markets again, kind of, trying to price that is very, very difficult, and they're kind of shrugging it off, saying, this is the kind of behavior that we expect from Donald Trump. And the only real effect that we're seeing this morning is actually the Canadian dollar starting to fall. And I think we've just got to remember that Donald Trump is still in control of, the US, sure. and his policy decisions do carry a lot of weight. And while he can do a lot of damage to the global economy, going against him is not always the best policy.
Yeah, and taking a look at that in the context of all the markets that have been trading, particularly from Friday to today, a lot of them just saying, well, we're going to hold back. The volume seems to have been lighter. Is that pretty much going to be the case for the JSE for the rest of today as well?
Yeah, looking at it, Australia is also closed today, so some of that Asian volume was taken out. I think they closed for the Queen's birthday. Yeah. And that's certainly going to impact Asian market trading as well. But again, I think a lot of investors sitting on the sidelines just waiting to see how this develops. I mean, as you said, we've got the meeting with North Korea tomorrow. Sure. But we've also got a lot of central bank announcements as well. So, so one of the reasons that we saw the weakness in the rand last week was certainly, I think, concerns around the tapering of the QE programs. So we're getting that announcement from the ECB probably on Thursday. We're going to get a little bit more color around how that tapering is going to play out. We've also obviously got the Fed announcement, and I mean that's overwhelmingly the markets are expecting the US to raise interest rates. The Fed funds rate is starting to drift towards the top end of the band that the Fed targets. So if you look at also the Fed Watch tool, you kind of expect them to hike. I think it's set at about 91% chance that they will be hiking based on Fed fund futures. So sure. It's almost a given, but I think you need to take a step back and look at this in the general context of what's happening in global markets, and that's that the developed world is tightening monetary policy, and that makes them a more attractive destination than the emerging markets. Sure. So that's certainly not a good thing for South Africa, as you see those portfolio flows starting to move towards developed markets.
Does that add pressure on the South African Reserve Bank as well to then perhaps hike at some point, because we are lagging behind?
Absolutely, and looking at it, we're still looking okay in terms of inflation. Sure. I don't think the Reserve Bank is under too much pressure at the moment. Certainly, if we see that the rand remains weaker for an extended period of time, I think that the pressure is certainly going to mount. Yeah. At the moment, I mean, we had some of the analysts talking about a potential cut in rates. I think that's now off the table. Sure. But whether we're looking at actually seeing rate hikes, some guys are pricing a rate hike probably end of the year in South Africa, just 25 basis points, and another one in 2019, but it's very difficult to make those kind of calls because the global environment at the moment is just so dynamic, and things move so quickly. So at the moment, I mean, we're within our bands and things are okay, but not potentially as good as they have been.
I would be remiss if I didn't speak about a $17.5 billion BEE transaction that Vodacom has now entered into. My worry, however, is that we've just seen Sasa Lenzalo sort of, fall by the wayside. We have a new one from Sasol, but Vodacom in particular with this, do you think the market trusts BEE transactions? Is this going to be a success, you reckon?
It's interesting. So the previous Vodacom transactions have been, very successful. And looking at Vodacom, it's a very different prospect to some of the other BE schemes. I think Vodacom, if you look in the telco sector, it is a lower risk company potentially. Also, the scheme kind of talks to Vodacom South African assets as well, which we know the CEO is looking at trying to expand the deal to be at group level. But looking in terms of the deal, it's not particularly dilutive. I think the market was expecting it as well. And Vodacom is a good, it's a good company. And if you look at it, the only, I suppose, concern that potentially investors in the scheme would have is that, if you look at kind of the earnings and revenue from Vodacom, it's been fairly stagnant since about 2013. Yeah. And part of this is because of the BE transactions, but it's also obviously the transactions as it moves into Africa, doing deals with its shares there, which is also dilutive, which has put a little bit of a cap on where Vodacom's earnings at least have gone. But overall, I think, it's something that, potentially it is a low risk scheme and something that should be taken. I mean, I think it's definitely an opportunity.
Very, very quickly as well, Fitch coming out perhaps on Friday. Nothing happening from that front, you reckon?
Now, again, Fitch doesn't give us kind of a defined schedule of when they're going to release announcements. So it could be Friday, it could be earlier, but most likely I'd say after market on Friday if they're going to. I don't think they're going to move on their predictions. They have kind of alerted the markets that they are positive on the developments that have been made in South Africa up until now. So I think we wouldn't see a movement potentially on the outlook. The outlook is stable as well. Yeah. So it'll really be the commentary around the announcement that everyone will be watching and hopefully striking an optimistic tone.
BB Plus is where we stand with regards to the credit rating with Fitch. At a stable outlook, South Africa certainly will have a keen interest in just how that fares. Gary Boyson, portfolio manager at Ranswers, having joined me now in discussion really for the things that are happening. Of course, Wendy Luhabe as well, appointed independent non-executive director of Steinhoff Africa Retail as of 1st of January 2019. Also, more market news coming through on that front. But that's it for me for now.